Welcome to another episode of the Clean Palette Podcast. I'm your host, Justice Johnson. Today, we pull back the paint and reveal the clean palette on this artist perspective from Cameron Green, otherwise known as Cameron Obscura.
Yes, hello.
He is a 21-year-old Michigan artist, and Cameron, how did you get the name Cameron Obscura?
That's actually a sort of interesting story. I was in my history of graphic design class, actually, about a year ago, I think. And the history of graphic design originated mostly from like photography, kind of. And so we learned a bit about photography and the origins of that. And we learned about something called a camera obscura, which is basically a box which has a tiny, tiny pinhole in it, and the rest of the box is dark. And the tiny pinhole allows light to go into the box and be projected on the back wall as if it were seen outside. But the projected image is flipped. So I thought the name Cameron Obscura for an artist name was just like really cool because it is like a flipped perspective as well as like a photography origin.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what mediums do you work with?
I work with a lot of mediums.
What are your go-to?
Go-to maybe graphic design, because that's what I'm doing in school kind of currently-ish. Taking a break, but graphic design, and then also just maybe pen for drawing. Those are my two, but I also do collage as well as watercolor and a few others.
Gotcha. And how would you say, what is the origin story on Cameron Obscura? How did you get into art? Have you always been interested in art, or were there like key figures that really pushed you into becoming more artistic?
I've always just been super into art. Ever since I was a kid, kids always draw and do finger painting, stuff like that. But I don't know. I always just felt like this is like there's like nothing else that I could do, I guess, or like maybe could do, but there's nothing else that I really would want to do other than create art. And growing up, I was always in art classes, and I entered a few art competitions when I was a kid, so it's always been there. My family has a bit of a history with art as well. My mom, my dad, so I think it's always just been part of me.
Are there any key inspirations that you can think of that really kind of drove you closer to art rather than just like kind of pursuing it as a hobby? For me personally, it was Butch Hartman, who, if you know, does The Fairly Odd Parents, and does Danny Phantom, that style.
He's a podcast too. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So he was one of my main inspirations for art, also him being from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering if you had something kind of just growing up, and then afterwards, I'd kind of like to know if there are any personal inspirations that you kind of look to now with your artwork.
Well, I guess just pushing me to pursue like my passion for art and just like helping me realize what I want to do was sort of my parents in a way, helping me, supporting me, just loving my art, but also I guess teachers throughout the years. It's funny, like art teachers and maybe some music teachers, sometimes they seem insignificant, but like looking back now, like a lot of my art teachers had a big impact on me.
So how would you describe your necessary training? Do you would you consider yourself classically trained, more self-taught for your particular style?
I guess like a mix of both.
A mix of both?
Yeah, because like I was taught classically in some ways. I've been doing graphic design ever since high school, so I've been taught classically through that. And other art classes I've gone through, some drawing classes, painting classes. So I do have a fair amount of classical training, but I like to take that and like spin it like like I take that, but then I jump into it and experiment, and then
Mm-hmm.
learn based off of that. So yeah, bit of a
Um,
mix.
so with your current style, I noticed recently, I guess more recent years, you do a style known as the continuous line drawing,
Yes,
um,
yeah.
where I guess you could kind of explain it best, but how I know it is just you start your image and the pen never leaves the page until the image is complete.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And usually they're like pretty simplistic, they're not like super complex. Um I have a few that are just, maybe like a hand or like something, but it's really fun and like honestly cool to challenge yourself to just continuously draw, like no stopping, I guess, and sort of not much planning because it I guess it just helps you adapt to a new line or to a new stroke and to get where you want to go, even if you like one step back wasn't your where you wanted to be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it helps me in many ways.
So was there a particular inspiration? Like, who are your influences now with like your drawing style? You have a lot of texture in your art. I noticed, especially
Thank
of
you.
recent years. Lots of different sizes of your lines, with
Mhm.
particularly your normal sketches and pen work.
Yeah.
A lot of different shading, a lot of different textures, especially your wood. I've noticed, or like your more organic features,
Mhm.
have a lot of different textures. So who do you look to when you kind of look back, or like on a more professional level artist, or more
Okay. Some of my favorite like artists that I've been inspired by or like I guess helped me through my art. One of them maybe Andy Warhol. I went to the Andy Warhol Museum in Philadelphia, and his work is incredible. It's really cool to see his less popular work because he did a lot of like simplistic advertising drawings for like shoes and other clothing materials and stuff. And I just thought like some of those were even better to me and impact me more than his like famous pop art style.
mm-hmm.
So that's one of them. Um, I'm not quite sure. So many artists. I
Just
don't know
kind
if I
of
can keep like yeah. I don't know. I have so many artists that inspire me. Like don't get me
mm-hmm.
wrong.
But
I just
particular inspire
yeah.
like insights.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
understand that.
Yeah.
So I've noticed. Well, we've talked about on our radio show at Oakland University,
Yep.
WXOU. We used to do the Daily Dose of Extra, and we've talked about one of your big goals being that you used to want to work at Pixar.
Yeah. Oh
So
my gosh.
as as you've kind of grown with that was very old school like train of thought
It
that was a
was.
few
Yeah.
years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of wondering now with your current style and the way that you do things, the way you carry yourself, and the way that you just view art as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
is that still a direction that you would consider, or is that kind of a goal of yours, or have you kind
Um.
of strayed away from that?
It's definitely still in my mind. I think about that a lot because I used to keep like the phone number for Pixar in my wallet for some reason because I was like I don't know, just like give them a call one day. But yeah, I still strive to get like to that level of art, but like I don't know if it would be like working at Pixar, maybe
Mm-hmm.
working with Pixar as a collab, maybe as like me as a future artist. But Pixar, like when I was more into I guess drawing and illustration, still am, but like when that was my main thing, I think that's when I wanted to work at Pixar. Um because I just love all their movies and everything. But not anymore, I don't think, because I just like animation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's my thing.
Could you work on 1,000 little mini hairs of a toy
I couldn't.
as your
I
main
couldn't
job?
do that. I could not do that because that's like I'm very detail oriented, but that is like so like in depth of it. I just and I know there's like teams of people
Mm-hmm.
there, But I think me as an artist, I want to develop my own style and like eventually possibly work with Pixar, because I know this one artist that I follow on the internet is doing a collab with Pixar.
Oh, really?
And yeah, so like something like that where he's got his own style, he's got his own art that he does, but Pixar liked it, so it looks like they're kind of doing a thing.
And how would you describe your personal style?
My that's
Well, if you can't describe the style aesthetically, maybe the mood that you strive towards with your art,
okay.
or maybe even just like a emotion or feeling that you kind of go towards, or how you develop.
Yeah. Well, I think the basis of like a lot of my art is centered around color. Like that's my favorite part of like a lot of the art that I make is color. My other artist name is Cam the Colorful, but I guess color specifically because just working with color combinations, maybe like primary colors, you know, analogous colors, just like stuff like that. So working a lot with color, saturated color, but also just when people see my art, I just want them to be like, wow, like I guess I want to invoke different emotions. Like this makes me feel like warm, but like maybe also would make me feel kind of hollow. So
Okay.
I think my goal for my art is to make it as wonderful as I think, and then I like to see others' perceptions of what they think of what I made, because that in itself is like kind of art, you know.
Yeah. Personally, with my paintings, I this is gonna lead into my next question. With my paintings, a lot of the time when they're not commissioned pieces, they're more personal pieces. I kind of take my own mental state into consideration and try to fully flesh that idea out. But then again, I also street art is a big inspiration for me, alongside cartooning and more cartoons as a whole. So my overall style, I'd like to say, is a big assortment of color with a very bland background, typically,
Okay.
or like a one big subject matter. And the background does contribute to the contrast of color versus either a black and white or a gray style, or overall like maybe space, but that also has to deal with like kind of the mental state as well. I was kind of wondering, when you sit down at your art table or your workshop, wherever you feel fit to draw or make art, what's your process? What do you do when you sit down?
Well, a lot of the times it's different. For like a lot of the projects that I do, maybe an idea sparks when I'm doing something else, possibly like at work or something. So I would write it down. I have like a big post-it or a big pin in my wall of like all my ideas. But and then those ideas lead to other ones. But when I'm just trying to sit down and do some art, I kind of just try to randomly sketch, you know, just throw shit out there, you know, because like I think sometimes those are when your best ideas come out, because you're just not really thinking about it. So I think it leads to some things, you know, maybe you wouldn't think about but are amazing.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as an artist, I guess I'd like to know what one of your biggest hurdles that you would like to say, like what is one of your biggest hurdles as an artist that you have to try to get over the hill?
I think it's a lot of just mental stuff, you know? Like I love my art, and I love the direction that it's going, but there's always doubts in my mind, you know, just of like I guess, is this really good? Are people going to like this? Are like, is it even worth making, or like, am I worth being an artist? Which are horrible thoughts to have. Like,
just the overwhelming self-doubt.
Exactly. Yeah.
Art is a weird space because I can't remember which comedian said it best, but it's the only job where you have to try to prove yourself every time you do it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
don't, if you go, I'm going to paraphrase here. I really wish I knew the comedian's name that I was referencing. But when you go to work at the Gap or you go to work at your office, nobody think, oh, it's Donald Glover in his stand-up special Weirdo. He brought it up and he says, if you go to work, nobody thinks that you forgot everything you know. And he was attributing this to acting, but I guess the same would be true for every new album that an artist put out, or even just every painting. Everybody has their own, can he still do it? Is this going to be as good as its last?
Yeah.
And art being so subjective, it's the only space where you really can't mess up. And people judge so harshly based on your work.
Exactly. Yeah. So that it's like so hard to really I guess build yourself up in a way, because on one hand you want to make art that you love and that you are passionate about, but also you're like, sometimes maybe, oh, this isn't doing so well with the audience, so like maybe I should make something new. But it's like, that's not true to you, because you're kind of reflecting your art off of the reaction of people. But yeah, it's difficult to like find the balance for that.
I think a nice way that I've tried to go about that is not really looking at the piece as soon as I upload. I wait. As soon as I upload, I put it out there.
Yes.
And I guess I'll kind of come back to this later on in the interview, but I kind of just set it out there and I let it do its thing.
Yeah.
If it does well, it does well. If not, then it kind of happens.
You can just work on something else.
There are so many different things that contribute to how people, like the algorithm of how it promotes, or even just like how people's perception of it is, the picture quality, whatever it could be.
Yeah.
But I'll get more into the kind of social media aspect. I have a good question for you later on.
Okay, yeah.
But I wanted to first kind of take a moment to get to know you as an artist personally. Now I would like to do something that I would like to call the artist showcase. I had you send in 3 different images. I don't know if you'd like to pull them up as well.
I'd like to take a look at them.
So if you go on at Clean Palette Podcast on Instagram, I will have all of these pictures that you can see alongside. That way, if you were listening to the audio, you can join us in looking at his work or just come back to it later. If not, if you're watching the video, obviously I will have them up right in between us.
Very nice, very nice.
So if we go to the first image.
All right, which one are we doing?
It is a great thing that I do not have the best service down here.
Oh,
and
man.
It is, one sec, I will pull these up in just a second.
We love that.
Here we go.
That's okay.
So the first one that I would like to pull up is this one that I believe that you did for Drawtober.
Yes, that one right there I did do for
carving.
Drawtober. Yeah.
This is when I referenced your texture work.
Okay.
I kind of want you to describe this piece and kind of what, if it has any meaning to you or if it was just kind of the prompt. Because I know that they were very vague. And if you'd like to kind of explain Drawtober as opposed to Inktober.
Okay, yeah. Firstly, Drawtober is just a little different than Inktober, because Drawtober, you could really do like any medium at all for the prompts, and the prompts are set up through a few days, so there's only 6 prompts through the month, rather than Drawtober being 1 prompt every day. I mean, Inktober being 1 prompt every day, just ink. So yeah, but I wanted to do that. I wanted to do Drawtober because I wanted to do watercolor and other stuff, and I just couldn't handle a drawing every day. But onto the piece,
So what was the prompt for this one? This one.
The prompt was carving.
Carving.
Yes. This was the first prompt of the month, and so I wanted to do a bit of a spooky-ish vibe, but also it does have a bit of meaning to it.
If you don't mind, sorry to interrupt. If you don't mind, for the audio listeners that may be driving on their way to work, if you wouldn't mind describing it aesthetically
Sure.
before kind of getting into the meaning, just so that if they don't have the
Sure,
opportunity to
sure,
look
yeah.
at it.
Well, this piece is a portrait, I would call it, of a character that I made. Sort of represents me in a way, but the character is carving a smiley face into
Kind of a jack-o'-lantern style.
yeah, exactly, into his body. Totally expressionless in the face, and with some headphones on because I thought it balanced everything out. And I also wear headphones a lot. But yes, it's a blue character here. Is supposed to kind of represent me as well as the prompt carving, and it's in a frame. In a way, I drew like a frame.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be what you're talking about with like the texture.
Yeah,
in a
when
way.
I referred to texture, I refer to this one and the second one that you talked about, which I'll get to in a moment.
Yeah. So the texture on the frame, I did basically just, I've started it out with like just yellow colored as the frame.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this is too boring. Like I wasn't satisfied with it, so I wanted to add more. And so I was like, I added a few lines and I thought that was great, but I thought I needed more lines. And so eventually led to like the wood, like looking
The wood grain.
kind of look with like the lines being longer, some shorter, but yeah.
What would you say, does this piece have a particular meaning now? Or was this kind of just going alongside the prompt, the first thing that kind of came to mind, and you kind of worked with it?
Yeah, a bit of both actually. Like the prompt was, the first thing that I saw carving, so I just thought of this really. But it does have meaning still, even though it is like a prompt
Mhm.
that it was given to me. But so like I guess sometimes it's like even sometimes when you are truly not happy, you kind of need to force yourself to put on a happy face in some situations. And so yeah, that's kind of the meaning behind it. And so it's supposed to be like a mirror actually.
Oh, so more of a mirror aspect. I can see that with the depth of the portrait itself within the frame.
Yeah, I also
Um,
did a lot of shading within the frame. The background is green, but I did a lot of shading with this pen that I have, which is an electric dots pen,
Ooh.
which is great for texture and shading because it has two speeds, like where it just goes and goes and goes, and just like it's great for ink.
Nice. And so I'd kind of, with the going alongside like that texture element and just your variety of lines is kind of what I like about your work.
Thank you.
Especially your continuous line work, where even when it's obviously the same pen that's used, there are still some lines that look deeper. And so I'd like to get into this one. This was another Inktober drawing, or was this Inktober or Drawtober?
This was Inktober, but it was from
was this last year?
yeah 2019.
This is drawing number 16, which the prompt was wild.
Yes,
And
I was more on top of everyday drawing last year. Since it was my first Inktober, so that was surprising. But for this piece, it's basically a tribute to my adventurous spirit with my like bit of a group of friends from high school.
nice.
Some may call us the Tortilla Squad. You may or not, but either way, that doesn't relate. This piece is all ink, and basically, it's supposed to be a forest, kind of landscape look into, and there's 9 sets of eyes hidden within the trees and bushes and such. And those 9 sets of eyes are supposed to represent me and my friends from that group, and just our adventurous spirit and our love for exploring and stuff. And I think that kind of spirit also just relates to art in so many ways. Like,
Your artwork, I've noticed over the few years of like watching it develop, it has gone from a lot of more abstract work to dealing with a lot of either modified landscapes or kind of I don't want to say kind of distorted landscapes almost, or just nature as a whole, or your take on nature. How has that, was that more, were you thinking kind of doing that, or has it
Yeah.
just been more as your inspirations go, they kind of just flowed towards that direction naturally?
Yeah, I think I've always just been connected with nature because I've always been I've always loved going outside as a kid, and just it's just a great place to heal and enjoy life and go exploring and adventure. So I just think there's a lot of wonder in landscapes and just nature in general. So I like to take my own spin on some landscapes and forests and such. I do a lot of forest work because yeah, trees and especially I think are really powerful. So that just helps me with my art.
And alongside that kind of theme, I like to bring up your recent selection of pieces, your collage work, your color coordinated collage set.
Yes, yes.
And specifically collage number 4, which was green.
yes.
And
my
while
favorite.
all of yours deal with some element of life or of living objects, whether it be flowers or nature or bees, this one is all plant life. Except I think there might be
There's a
a
turtle.
turtle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
there's
still.
one turtle, but other than that, it's all plant life or vegetation of some kind.
Yeah.
And can you really kind of go over the meaning of this piece particular, because since it is one of your more recent works,
Yeah.
and kind of elaborate more on that theory of life that you bring to the piece?
Okay. Well, as a whole, this series came to me from like months ago. But I only developed it in the past month. But I think it just took time to like really think about the thoughts in my head of like what these collages are trying to portray. And I guess it's just like displaying the beauty of each color within our normal world. Like red has the stop signs and the strawberries and such, but green is mostly just like life, like you said. Green is life. Green is vegetation. Green is growth. It's a lot of like, it's kind of personified, like the color of just life, I think. Because like that's how I view green in a way, is like growth, life, and yeah, just journey.
Just the
kind of
journey as a
thing.
whole.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a nice little plug here.
Thank
If you
you.
go to his Instagram, he has made prints. These are his first print sets. And DM him. What is your at?
At cam.thecolorful. So hit me up there.
I'll put it right up here for those watching, and I'll put it in the description of the episode. Go support the boy. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
So
thank you.
that is going to conclude the spotlight portion of the artist perspective. And now I'd kind of like to get a little deeper into the artist's insight. So this is a section where I'm going to bring up kind of questions that I have personally, or that I am struggling with at the moment. I'd like to get each artist that I have on the show, I'd like their take on it. I'd like to learn from each artist that comes on here, and I'd like you to be able to have that opportunity as well. So these are either questions that I am currently struggling with or common questions online. And if you ever have a question that you would like me to ask an upcoming artist that I have on the show, you can DM me at Clean Palette Podcast. So the question for this week
Yes.
is going to be, so how would you deal with art block? I know we talked earlier about the mental state kind of affecting and like the self-doubt, but another mental aspect is just not necessarily inspiration plays a factor, but, or I guess motivation plays a factor, but just not having the inspiration, or I have that piece over there that I was telling you about as you walked in. I knew that I had art block. I knew that it wasn't going to work. And I tried to, when you try to push through art block, it doesn't always come out well.
No.
I ruined an entire painting, which I can still salvage, but it's a lot more work than if I would have just waited and tried to play it out.
Okay.
So how would you personally deal with art block, or what are some tips that you have for those who do struggle with art block?
Well, depending on like what you're blocked with in art, whether it be you're working on a piece and you're struggling to finish it or like get it exactly how you would want, or you're not working on anything and you don't know what to do with art, so you're just kind of like blocked entirely. For the first one, I would say just keep going, just like keep at it, because there's going to be constant mistakes with art, but good thing about that is that you can make adjustments, and if you just keep going and adjusting along the way, I think it'll come out wonderfully, and maybe not exactly how you would have liked it, but nearly maybe. But just keep going, in so many ways. And for the second one, where you're just blocked out entirely, don't feel like art at all, I'd get that a lot, but I think me personally, I just like to sit down, like I said earlier, just kind of shit anything out. Like, doesn't have to be good at all. Can just be like some stupid sketch, some random idea or phrase or something. I don't know. Just shit something out on a paper.
I notice my biggest times I am inspired is when I travel to a community that I'm particularly inspired by. And that for me is New York.
Okay, yeah.
New York, every time I visited, it doesn't happen right away. But when I come back, it is times when I can pump out enormous amounts of pieces of art. It might be due to the time that I go and like kind of plays alongside the mania and the creative spirit that I have that I get along that time. That's a typical pattern.
Yeah, it could be.
But every time I go to New York, I get this inspiration and I start 4 projects afterwards.
Wow, okay.
And I kind of did that this year, and it worked a decent amount, but then it died off a little quicker. But the environment plays a big factor, and I think it's hard when you're in your day-to-day. So kind of how would you what are little ways that you can say to get out of your comfort zone environmentally?
Oh, like just like your surroundings.
Yeah, your surroundings.
maybe?
Because like when I'm in a space with so much creative energy like New York,
Yeah.
and everybody is creating, there's street artists, there are galleries all over the place. The Contemporary Art Museum in New York is by far
man.
my favorite thing.
I gotta go there. I got to.
And so what are your tips kind of for getting out of your average surroundings, especially when you have a constant work schedule, a constant school schedule, potentially, just a normal kind of routine? How do you break that in small ways to kind of break up the mundane?
Well, I think you just need to literally just set aside some time. Set aside some time to go somewhere you've never gone before, or go out into nature, maybe someplace you've never gone before. Just get up and go somewhere, because like somewhere new especially can lead you to other places, as well as just like pop random thoughts in your head like, this is a great art idea. And it's also just great to let your mind breathe from the art, to take a break from it, So you're just looking around, maybe get inspired from some things. But I think location matters a lot with your art, especially inspiration, like you were saying. I don't know if I have like a certain city where I'm super inspired. I haven't been to New York in so long,
Mm-hmm.
even though that city is amazing and it probably would inspire me. I just don't know if I maybe actually Ann Arbor,
Ann Arbor.
since I was born there, and I think it's also just like fairly artistic town. And I think it's got a great downtown as well. So sometimes I guess I would go there, as like spend some time downtown and just realize my roots, remember those, and I think some great art can come from that.
Nice. My second one, and then I will have. So there's two more questions for you as this kind of concludes. We kind of briefly discussed social media, and a lot of internet artists or people who are artists who are trying to display their artwork online. It can sometimes seem like you need to pump out consistent content. I've noticed that if there are times when I take a break, I lose a handful of art, or I lose a handful of followers, and especially with something so correlated to your personal work, seeing how many followers you have or how many likes, you can get into how that does to somebody's self-esteem.
Yeah.
But I'd like to kind of more or less focus just on the kind of quantity of paintings or images or artworks that are kind of expected out of artists, and how you kind of block that expectation out, or how you kind of cope with the constant expectation to pump out at least one piece of art a week, when in reality the best pieces take the most time.
Exactly. Yeah. I guess I kind of just ignore all expectations from the outside world in a way. 'Cause as an artist, I think the only expectations you should really follow are your own. And even then, you don't even have to stick to those. 'Cause me personally, I'm not consistent with anything. It's a symptom of ADHD and just me as a person, but I'm not consistent with anything. I'm actually writing a poem about consistency and how it doesn't come easy to me, but
Is it inconsistent rhymes patterns? Is it?
I didn't think about that, but that would be very cool to add into that poem. But yeah, I think I really prefer quality over quantity. And sure, maybe the people that create, like constantly, maybe not constantly, but like are always, trying to push stuff out. Their art is great. But me personally, I just know that if I were to try to do like maybe a daily design or like a weekly project, I don't think it would be as good.
I attempted that. I remember I
Yeah.
told you when I first started my page, which was only a year ago. I started or less than that actually. I started in January of 2020. And my initial goal was to at least upload one piece, whether it be a doodle, a sketch, piece of content one time a day, just to keep myself going. And it was so unrealistic to attempt, imagine Inktober, but all year long,
Yeah.
of some kind of style. And some of my doodles I actually tried to incorporate into full-fledged paintings later on. And especially with painting takes so long
my
to
God, painting
either let it
is so
set
long.
or do different layers
Yeah.
or whatever it may be. Typically I can't do one painting a day, even if I'm on a hot streak. I can try, but it might not work out that way. So that's a nice little tidbit to kind of ignore.
Yeah,
all the
exactly. And I totally get that idea of trying to like do something every day and post it just to like keep you active and keep you artistry-ish, but I think what's better is like just take out the posting and just try to even just draw something every day, even if just like a stupid little doodle. You don't have to share it. You don't have to put it anywhere, just for you. Just do one of those daily. I don't do that because I'm like, I try, but yeah, just try, and
Justice
I think
tries.
exactly.
Humble plug.
Like go follow. But
Well, the weird thing about my page was that it wasn't intended to be a consistent art page. Justice Tries was supposed to be originally me just attempting either different mediums, me trying new things for the first time, or just like, it was a spot. My first bio was, this is where I'm going. I think my first post was basically saying, this is where I'm going to dump all of the extra content that I have that I'm not displaying on my other channels or my other places. And as the response from my paintings, really, like, I don't paint. I'm more of a self-taught artist. As I was painting and the reception was getting better and better, it became a painting page. It became an art page. So it was a weird development. So like my idea of doing one thing a day just to keep me on my toes was whether it was going to be a painting or just an idea. And it's kind of turned into what it is now, which is, I'm glad that it did, but at the same time, there's a little more pressure now that it did.
Yeah.
Before it was just a creative, not a graveyard, but you know, it was a spot where I could just like throw all my ideas at the wall, and if it stuck, it stuck, and just put stuff out there for my own sake.
I got a quick question for you.
Yes.
Since it's kind of developed into more of this painting page, do you feel pressure to just post paintings now?
Okay, so that is actually yes, because so I am better with I do decent sketches where I can
I've seen 'em.
sketch
They're good.
and my shading's pretty well. But my normal just drawing, or like I should say, when I just do like a marker or my pen work, I tried to do Inktober. I did one post and it was a little rushed, not gonna lie, but it didn't get a great reception. Or like some of my drawings don't get the greatest reception, and I'm not one to take down posts. I did take down my one Inktober one because I only did one day because I ended up going to New York and it wasn't my best work. While I am more pressured to do paintings, I put up what I put. Like if I'm making paintings, then I'll post the paintings. But I've had commissions to work on, so I'll mainly post the commissions I do, and that has been the biggest struggle for me personally. Because I only have time to work on the commissions I'm working on. So I haven't had a personalized painting that really meant something to me.
Yeah.
And
I've kind of noticed that. Like, you've really just been doing your art for other people, kind of. But,
it with the way I kind of developed as an artist, it was always faces. I like person-to-person connection. I think that looking into somebody's eyes while you talk is the number one thing to do. Eyes have a very big message.
Windows to the soul.
Faces as a whole, I watched a lot of cartoons, anime growing up, so it was all faces. And the action shots were always the hardest thing to do or replicate, especially in those. And I was always good at painting or drawing faces as a kid. And so it kind of, doing the commissions takes me out of my comfort zone.
That's good.
And that is why I post so many commissions and I kind of put those to the forefront, because I'm not always inspired, or like my paintings, as I said before, are based on my mental state dealing with my bipolar a lot of the time. And when I'm not actively thinking about something, then I don't need to post about, or I don't need to make a painting.
Yeah.
I don't need to constantly be updating people on my mental state.
No.
But I haven't had the opportunity recently, at least, to think about what it even is. Like, because I used to use drawing, and you knew from living with me that if I was super stressed, I would draw, or like whatever the feeling was.
Yeah.
And
which is a great idea, I think, just to express it on paper. It's wonderful, yeah.
And so it's very strange to like not have the opportunity, because I have 5 commissions I need to work on, but I've had art block.
Yeah.
And so now it is this weird thing of like, how do I get out of the art block without messing up somebody else's art? But also painting is so much like more involved. And
you've had art block like with the commissions now?
Even with the so I took a mini break, and when I came back from the mini break is when the art block really set in, and mixed with other elements. It was such a strange time. So now it's kind of, I'm kind of breaking out of it slowly by working on other projects along with it.
That's a good idea.
And you learn so much from other mediums and stuff. So whether it's me setting up the framing for this video or editing it and like thinking about how things relate to each other,
It's all art.
it's all some form of art.
Exactly.
So
That's what I think too.
I post what, to kind of get back to your question, I post what I am making at the time. And so I am kind of, what I've been making a lot of recently is paintings, and that's what gets the best reception. And I think what I can strive towards the best with the medium. But another reason I like painting rather than drawing is painting is way more subjective than drawing is. And I've told you about my opinion on that.
Okay. Yeah.
With my opinion on drawing, is, or at least what I've seen from people, is that if you are not precise with your drawing, they say that doesn't look like that. That's not a good drawing.
Mm-hmm.
With a painting, you can go and I could paint a purple dog with
Yep.
a jawline as big as a table.
Cool. I like
And
it.
somebody will say, well, what does that mean? Instead of, that doesn't look like a dog.
True.
Somebody will say, well, what are they trying to say with this piece? And painting, I feel like, at least in the perspective of people like non-painters, is a lot more, what is what is the message behind this, rather than how well I did based on like the real life significance of a item.
Yeah, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, because a lot of times painting, there's so many varieties as well, like, abstract shit or like more realistic, or like
Contemporary, whatever you want to, whatever your
a
style
mix
is.
of a few. But yeah, I think it's definitely more subjective than other kinds of art because like especially for some like digital artists, or even physical artists with like illustration, pencil, stuff like that. You're right. It's like you got to get the proportions on point. Or if you don't, it'll look weird. I mean, sure, you can make your own proportions kind of how you want your character to look, but if that doesn't work, it's just gonna look off. So you really gotta try hard with pencil, but I like what you were saying. Like, people are just gonna say, what does this mean with like paintings? And I think that's interesting. Like, why, like, kind of maybe just paintings?
It might be the flow of a painting, but if from when I went to the gallery and just looking at like other more artwork that was being sold instead of like fancy artwork in a museum, it is a lot of expression in there, and it is a lot of, I've never seen so many mixed mediums before, because you see underneath each piece what it's made out of.
Yeah.
And there was a few pieces where it is acrylic paint, spray paint, pen, marker, and charcoal
Yes.
all mixed into one piece, and all of them just show different things. And I don't know, I just think that painting, in a way, it allows me to focus more on what the feeling of it is, rather than what it actually looks, what it is supposed to be in real life.
I like that. Yeah. And it's cool, like you were saying, the mixed media with paints. I've seen a lot of artists even add like felt or like feathers to their paintings, or like googly eyes. I don't know. There's like so much that you can do with painting and everything. It's really cool. And I do like some of that kind of stuff with my watercolor paintings. But I think it's a little bit different, with oils and acrylics and such.
Yeah, I would kind of like to end this off with every artist kind of as your personal generalized advice. What general advice do you have for any discouraged artists out there, or artists that are either in a slump or just not wanting to kind of start the project that they're working on?
I guess initially is just to thine own self be true. Like honesty for yourself is what's gonna help you most with your art, because art is like truly what comes from inside, and then you lay it out on paper or canvas or whatever. So if you're not actually expressing that, or like whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, and you're like basing it off of someone else's art and something like that, then that's where you're going to go wrong first. So you need to be true to yourself entirely from the start and stick with that. Even if people try to discourage you, like, what the fuck are you doing? Or something like that. You're like, this, you know what you're doing. You like, artists know what they're doing most of the time. But, okay, maybe we don't. But, yeah, I think your train of thought, I guess, or like your mindset for your art in some ways, like your journey, where you want to be, sometimes and you gotta stay true to that. And if you don't stay true, then you'll never get there. What was the other part of that question there?
Just generalized advice for people who are either in a slump
yeah.
or, but if that, it kind of seems like you hit the point.
Basically just that. Just be true to yourself and just keep at it. Just keep going as well.
Well, this has been another episode of Clean Palette. My name is Justice Johnson, and with me today we had Cameron Obscura.
Hello.
And where can they find all of your wonderful art?
Thank you. You can follow me on Twitter at CamTheColorFool, or you can follow me on Instagram at cam.thecolorfool. So hit me up there for some art.
And make sure that you guys go check out his 6-piece series on the color collages.
Yes, I'm selling those as prints right now in print packs. If anybody would like some, just DM me. Yeah.
And as I always say, I will see you next week. But until next week, try something new and stay creative.